I'm Gab, he's Jules. Grey skies over West London, but certainly not over North London
No.
because they are red.
Yes.
Arsenal are the 2025-26 Premier League champions. We're going to talk about that in a minute. There's a lot of other stuff going on, of course. Pep Guardiola, developments there. Europa
Villa.
League champions.
Yeah.
How about Aston Villa? Spurs losing at Chelsea because Tottenham get battered. I'm pretty sure they'll still stay up.
Yeah.
But let's just start here. Arsenal beating Burnley on Monday night, 1-0. Very tight game, as it often is whenever anybody plays Burnley. But then the big development on Tuesday. Bournemouth, I think, battered Manchester City. We're going to get to some of the decisions that were made there. But let's put this in context, Jules, because it is the first league title for Arsenal in 22 years.
Yeah, it's been a long wait, really long wait. A wait where the club lost their identity a little bit at times. The momentum, certainly, the end of the Wenger era and what came after. And then Mikel Arteta arrived a few months ago, years ago, and then changed everything, the dynamic, the mentality, the culture of that club from the first team, but to the whole club, really, from bottom to the top. And then they kept improving, but they also kept, feeling disappointing by finishing second in the table. But finally,
3 straight second place
exactly.
finishes.
And finally, maybe at times where the pressure got to them and we thought, okay, maybe City are going to do it again and they're going to finish second again. They find a way to getting over the line. I think they deserve it. They're the best team in the country. They've got an elite manager in Arteta. They've got a great, talented squad with the right team spirit. And I think they're worthy Premier League winners.
To me, there's 2 stories here about kind of what happened and how they got there. And I'd like to hit on both. The first one is that we saw Arsenal playing. We saw Arteta he comes in, a disciple of Pep Guardiola. This season, they played a different kind of football to the football they played before. When you talk about Arteta changing things, I think there's a lot to be said. We talk about managers and philosophies and so on. I think it takes a certain kind of humility to go and say, all right, well, we tried doing this. Now, can we tweak it? Can we do something a little bit different? Because this year, I don't want to go down the whole Arsenal or boring thing, but this is a more physical Arsenal side. It's a more intense Arsenal side. It is perhaps a less technical Arsenal side when I look at some of the choices that were made in certain games, in the fullback position, for example. And the set pieces playing a different part. I'm not saying it's uglier, although I think on the eye, certainly. But I'm just interested, his job is to go and win.
Yeah.
And to go against or to go and add this other I don't think he wanted to go against it, but to add this other dimension to it, I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, I mean, last season they've already evolved a lot and changed that. They wanted more control than before, certainly. And I think he was pragmatic when he needed to be. I think he was looking for all the thin margins that can take them over the line.
In a way that maybe he wasn't before. Before he wanted to outplay the opposition.
Yeah. I think he wanted the law of the possession and that kind of style. But I think realized that didn't take them to winning anyway. And to win, he wanted more control. So he did it. I think this is a better team than last season overall in everything they could do. Even if the football is maybe not as nice as even some early Arteta football at Arsenal, I think they're a very efficient team in both boxes. They're the best team without the ball. We've said that all year long. Their defensive structure is incredible. But with the ball, set piece is a big asset to have, but they were very good on set piece 2 years ago. Nobody said anything about it. But now because they're winning the league, everybody's mentioning set pieces. Liverpool 10 years ago scored more goals than them on set pieces in the Premier League season. So, come on. But it's a good asset to have, as we saw even with Aston Villa in the Europa League final. So you're right. He deserves a lot of credit. He's a world-class manager anyways.
One of the other things that strikes me when I look at this is that last year, Saka, Odegaard were the superstars. Maybe last year Odegaard not so much, but in the first 3 years of his tenure, Saka and Odegaard were the superstars. Even deciding who is the key man for Arsenal this year, who is their player of the year. I know a lot of people are going to revert to Declan Rice because he's big and he's a midfielder and whatever. But you can make just as strong a case for David Raya. I think you can make just a stronger case for Saliba. It seems to be more decentralized. It seems to be Saka, not as big a role as in the past, certainly in terms of output. He also had injuries. It seems to be more decentralized and more about the collective.
Yeah, and those players have grown as well. Let's not forget that, when Arteta arrived, that was his first job. He was a very young coach. He's still a very young coach on his first job still. I think he's still learning the process and still learning a lot of things. And those players were still young. Saliba has changed massively. Gabriel has changed massively in the last 3 years. Rice, arrived obviously from West Ham, but his improvement massive too. And I think that's it. And you probably become a better collective once your players have matured tactically, individually, technically, and all of that. And also, they've been together for quite a while now.
All right, Jules, I want to go back to this idea of collective. Now, I'm not saying Manchester City weren't a collective last year. Obviously, they were, and we know that's part of the Pep Guardiola ethos, going back to Barcelona and the cars and in the car park and all this stuff. But when Man City win, they were a collective with Haaland and Rodri.
Yeah,
Ballon d'Or Rodri. Arsenal, I think it's fair to say, don't have anybody who comes close to Haaland and that version of Rodri that we saw back then. And the playing for the individual, right? I mean, this is kind of a theme. Ultimately, we're talking about putting 11 players out there. Some are better than the others. If I'm Real Madrid, I want to get the ball to Mbappe and Vinicius, whichever way I can, as often as I can. Or if I'm Barcelona, we saw Barcelona, for example, last year, Champions semi-final, against a team that defends well, give the ball to Yamal, have him invent something, right? And maybe to some degree, Arsenal in past seasons was, okay, everybody's backed. What do? Let's give it to our best players, our most creative players, Saka and Odegaard. This season, I didn't see that. This season, what I saw, okay, we can debate whether Eze's better than Odegaard. They do different things, but Eze's capable of the unpredictable like Odegaard is, right? So then I'll go with Odegaard. I have that Eze option. I have the option, which I didn't do too often, but I just signed Gyökeres, who, is this gigantic man who takes up space. I have the option, pump the ball to Gyökeres, which you didn't see very often, but we saw occasionally, right? Have him knock the ball down. I have the option of set pieces, and you can say they were scoring a lot in set pieces before, but they certainly, was it like 1-on-4? That is another weapon. That's another option. I feel like that Arsenal were in a position where they could beat you so many ways. And I think in some ways, it took some of the pressure off of Saka and Odegaard, who also had injuries this season, who were also back. So for me, one of the questions that I would love to ask Arteta, if I could, but I'd want to give him truth serum first, is if Saka and Odegaard had gone into the season 100%, would you have made this transition where you're slightly de-emphasizing them, in the favor of the collective? Well, what do you think?
No. I think that was always the idea. But I think with the ball, attacking wise, they're still not there yet, and I think he knows that. I think they need something on the left-hand side. I think they have found a solution defensively, and they, like we said, very good at it. And I think those world-class players they have, certainly Gabriel, Raya, and Saliba, are amongst the best in the world. So they have those superstars that you mentioned, the Rodri, the Haaland, the Lamine. For them, it's Raya, Saliba, Gabriel. Saliba and Raya, for sure, certainly. And then I think with the ball, he's still trying to find out the best way of getting the best out of everybody, maybe more consistently, maybe more in the biggest games than they've had this season, because at times it's been a bit laborious, right, to play. So, and that will come with a bit more investment, certainly, again, on that left-hand side, attacking-wise. And we're still working out. We saw a different system in possession for the last 2 months of the season, which he's never done before. In a slightly different way of building up the play that he didn't do before again. So that would be very interesting to see next season. But I think he believes that he's still quite a long way out of where he wants them to be attacking-wise with the ball.
There's always a trade-off because obviously you talk about building chemistry, you talk about building automatisms, as they like to say in Spain. That right-hand side chain, the white Odegaard Saka, is obviously one example of it. It's not the only one. Also on the left, when you had a couple of years ago, Martinelli released into space. When you talk about changing and evolving, this being able to play in different ways, that comes at the expense of the chemistry, of the automatism. Every coach has to make this decision, right? to me, that's what I find interesting. And to me, when you talk about how they're going to strengthen the squad next year, or how they're going to how the squad is going to change, to me, that is one of the key elements, because this method of changing things, we've seen a bunch of different players play on the left. We've even seen him make big calls, dropping Zubimendi in some big games late. To me, that's pretty fascinating. I certainly would expect him to, also because, I hate to say this, it kind of makes sense from a business perspective as well. You're probably better off de-emphasizing your individuals and re-emphasizing the collective. And the reason for that is that that way your individuals can be fresh in the big games and your Champions League semifinals or key Premier League games. So when you talk about them not being where they want to be, I think it's still going to be down that path of having variety in the way you attack.
But like every team. But
I don't. You say like every team. I don't see all this variety in the way Real Madrid attack, or rather, if it's variety of individuals. I don't see this variety in the way Manchester City attack.
Yeah, but
or in the way Liverpool played last season. I don't see the same level of.
It's not because you've got one goal scorer with 25 goals that there's no variety in the way you attack. I think every team has to have different plans and different patterns and different things that they put in place. Where I think he's still working on is on how to utilize all this incredible attacking kind of force that he has, because you've got different profiles. There's something really interesting. Again, I think they missed something on the left, and some players will go, I think, in the summer too, attacking wise. So there will be a bit of work to be done there. But I think he knows that the control is one thing and is great, and that defensive structure is one thing and is great, and that takes you far. What can take you further even is if you can develop the attacking side of it a little bit better even.
There's a whole man management aspect to this as well. And you mentioned the left-hand side. I mean, the right-hand side we're assuming is fine once Timber returns. Timber and Saka, nobody's touching them. When I look, for example, up front, Kai Havertz came back from the injury. We saw some alternates with Gyökeres and Havertz. For that to continue next season, and I think there's a big call to be made over Havertz's future. I think he has 3 years left on his contract. So it's not like you have to shift him now if you can't get him the minutes. But depending on the kind of World Cup he has with Germany or whatever, to be able to sell Gyökeres and Havertz, saying you guys are going to alternate, that is going to be one of the challenges that he has, right?
Yeah. But again, like every big clubs where you've got options and stuff, I think if you keep them both.
Sorry, but I hate to be that guy, but every big club has options, right? But at Manchester City, you have Haaland and then you have Marmoush.
Okay,
they're not the same
Haaland
option.
And Alvarez, like a World Cup winner. So I know right now maybe not.
But it's not like you were alternating Haaland and Alvarez, right? You were playing Alvarez in a different position.
But you had two strikers that could play together, or one or the other, and I think it's the same with Havertz and Gyökeres. To be fair, it's like an Ekitike thing. It's like at some point every manager would love to have two top number 9s, and sometimes you can't afford the second one, or the second top goal scorer is not coming because he knows he's not guaranteed to. I don't know. There's a lot of things that can happen, but the idea is that you have two really top number 9s, and then they fight for their place, and then that's it. And if Gabriel Jesus leaves, which looks likely, then you probably simply, in terms of number in your squads, need to find another one to go and invest on too. Whether it's Alvarez, who could play up front, could play on the left, who obviously they really like, a younger player like, I don't know, let's say Krupi Jr. I think all of that will be on their radar this summer, especially if Gabriel Jesus goes. So it's good. And also, as we said often on the show, Gyökeres and Havertz are almost perfect because they're so different to each other, which is maybe not the case between Ekitike and Isak, for example, or in others kind of number 9 partnership that you can have in squads.
They're different, but I think they're both good at, obviously very different, but they both excel at kind of the two main things that you would expect Arteta would want from them, which is both are monsters in the air, both are pressing machines. I think Havertz maybe edges it there a little bit, but both of them will go and work their rear end off. I know, for me personally, I think You can alternate them if you're a tremendous man manager and if you've got a lot of games. I don't think ideally he would want to be in a situation where he plays a front two, for example, or even Havertz at 10, because that means that there's no Eze and no Odegaard in the team, and I don't think it's something that you want. So I think that will take a lot out of him, man management style. It's made easier, and I think if Alvarez comes, then it's different again, because I think Alvarez is on a different level to those two right now. It's possible to do because while they're both phenomenal players, and I love Havertz, he's the best on earth. Neither one is a Haaland, neither one is an Mbappe, neither one is a Kane, right? I want to talk about the left-hand side. I think Nani Madueke, some people say he dropped off a little bit this season. He arrived with so much skepticism from so many people. Like, why are we getting this guy to go and back up Saka and blah, blah, blah? I think he's been devastating on the left. And when I look at that left-hand side about who's possible to go and whatever, I don't think Madueke, I mean, just looking at this, I don't expect Madueke, Martinelli, and Trossard. I don't expect all three of them to still be here next year.
No. I mean, Madueke will definitely be at the club next season. Not to play on the left, but he will definitely be there. Martinelli and Trossard is probably a little bit different. Martinelli especially, because Trossard, I think, has played more and has showed it, not just the West Ham.
And he has less of a market if you want to claw back some money, just because he's older.
But yeah, I think that left-hand side, they've been offered quite a few players who are interesting. They love the kind of Kvaratskhelia type. For sure, everybody loves the Kvaratskhelia type of right-footed left winger thing. So they will look what they can do there for sure.
The other area of the pitch where you've got a very obvious duality is Eze and Odegaard. They do different things. They can both be great. Odegaard, I think, has 2 years left on his deal. I mean, I think is he the club vice captain or captain?
Odegaard?
Yeah,
captain. Yeah,
yeah. It's him and Saka essentially, right?
And then Rice and Gabriel.
Right. One of the criticisms about Eze is that he's more likely to give the ball away in a central position, which is something that no coach wants to do. Not because he's a bad player, but because he tries more difficult things. Risks, Odegaard, maybe a better passer, right? That's another area where it's going to take a lot of man management to find the right solution. And I also assume Zubimendi's being dropped, that was a function of form, of situation, of opponent. I don't necessarily need Zubimendi against Burnley if they're going to have 10 guys in the box. But that profile in front of the back four of passer, that's something that has to stay. Now, that is fundamental to what he does, right?
Yeah. Zubimendi is a very important player in that squad for sure. He got tired towards the end. He played so many minutes in the first 8 months of the season that the end was always going to be a bit difficult for him to get over the line. And let's not forget, he's been spending all his career at Real Sociedad, and he arrives in the most physical and athletics of Premier League season probably ever. That is so competitive, not great quality, I've said that many times, but very competitive for sure. We've never had so few points between first and 18th, for example, in the Premier League history. So, and for him to discover that, plus going find the Champions League, plus 2 domestic cups that he doesn't have in Spain, where there's only 1 domestic cup, obviously, I think it was a massive change for him. So you could understand why he kind of faded towards the end of the second half of the season. But he's a key player there for sure.
As you know, not that I'm obsessed with Ranieri, and to a lesser degree, Lewis Skelly. Lewis Skelly, we've been using him in midfield. He doesn't need to use him at left back when you have Calafiori and Hincapié. We expect them both to be back. And again, different profiles, right? They do different things. Looking at that midfield, you're going to want to find minutes for Lewis Skelly and for his development.
Yeah.
And you can integrate him in that midfield rotation, I think, to some degree. Maybe we'll see less of Norgard. I don't need to see that.
We haven't seen much of him either.
Really.
So less than that is hard.
But you still need Norgard because you need a ball winner, right? So Norgard's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But my question, though, then becomes Ranieri, because he went out on loan for 6 months. He got this big contract. The club showed a lot of faith in him. It's still another 4 years after this. Part of me says, I want to bring you back to the base, and whether it's backing up Saka and getting some minutes in some situations at number 10, obviously Marseille, the club's been a house on fire. Do you think he's ready for that?
Yeah, I think he's ready. I just don't.
And if he's ready, do you bring him back if you're not going to be able to find the minutes because you've got
That's
a lot
the
of
thing.
people?
Yeah, you've got a lot of players for sure. I still think his best position is not up wide on the right as a Saka backup or It would be a Saka, Madueke, Max Dowman kind of backup. The list is quite long on that right-hand side. For me, it's more central. So,
It's Eze and Odegaard who you'd be competing with. That's three guys for one position.
Yeah, but then I think he's a really good option to have if he's happy with that kind of status and role with Eze and with Odegaard. If he's not, then I think you need to have a conversation. But
a conversation about a loan, you're not writing him off. You're not moving him for a fee.
Yeah, definitely. And I think he will find a club in the Premier League where he will play regularly for sure.
Is that a better option than sending him to the continent?
No. It depends who the manager is, because that's why he went to Marseille. It was unfortunate that De Zerbi left so shortly after he arrived.
Wait, who's De Zerbi coaching now? He can go on loan to Spurs in the Championship and kill it. That's going to happen. There you go. You heard it here first.
That's a great idea.
All right, one other thing, and it's just the world that we live in. Swiss Ramble came out and ran some Arsenal numbers. If Arsenal win the Champions League, they're going to, I think, have the third highest revenue in world football. Even if they don't, it's going to be touch and go. They might break Manchester City's record revenue for a season. 715 million was Man City's mark. And yet, most likely, they're going to make a loss this season.
Yeah.
It's not a tragedy. I don't think they're going to be in trouble with financial sustainability rules, but that is kind of the reality of the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
Where you can go all the way to the final game in the Champions League, you can win the Premier League, but because of the investment you've made, you talked about more investment this summer. It's going to be, and obviously Gabriel Jesus is going to leave, and that will, and he's on a big contract
for sure.
But there's not too much else that you necessarily, unless you say, I'm going to, Martinelli's somebody who's been mentioned, but there's not too many, unless you want to lose one of your big pieces, there's not somebody else who's going to get you a fee.
No, and there's no big players who will leave for sure. But for the French players, a bit insulting because they're still very good players. But you might get some money there. You got money for Kivior. You will get money for Fabio Vieira, for example, who had a really good season now.
But you have to use that money to pay for Hincapié. 52 million they're on the hook for.
Yeah. But as we know, and I know you did the dump. You must have prepared because you're so on contract and everything. That's why.
Yeah.
It's just that there's because they're just.
Andrea will have
been champions
big decisions.
already. We're looking at. So we're
talking about the evolution next season.
No, I know, but still.
The reason I say this is because for me the decision is: do I consolidate this group and not make a? You talked about a major addition, perhaps down the left, right? I look at this and I say, these are the big decisions you have to make. Yes, first of all, you have to figure out how you're going to pay for Hincapié, and I think it's going to. I don't think Kivior. Well, Kivior's already gone, and you got a good fee for him. Vieira, you'll find somebody, but it's not. I think that alone won't cover the cost of Hincapié.
Yeah.
But then to add on top of that, there isn't that much room to maneuver. So for me, the question then is, the decision he's going to have to make is, if I ask for a big investment, I'm turning the screws a little bit. Am I better off saying, hey, Eze's going to be better, Gyökeres is going to grow, Saliba is going to grow, Lewis Skelly's going to grow, and kind of consolidate what you have? I think these are basically the club decisions, right?
But none of those players you mentioned are going to leave anyway. So I think
but what I'm saying is you focus on keeping this group and growing it. Or do you say we need something more? Every manager would want something more, right? If you
they would sign players in the summer, undoubtedly. I mean, even to be fair,
starting caliber players. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, on the left hand side, definitely. I think 100%. They will have a new left winger. Whether again, that's I don't know, a few of the names that they've been mentioned, or they've been offered. For I don't know, from Morgan Rogers to Mika Götze to those kind of guys. Or to Julian Alvarez, who can play wide too. This is the kind of players that we're talking. So that definitely there will be a new starter there, I think. Certainly that's the idea. So then the rest stays the same, consolidate, more used to play with each other, automatism, all of that. Relationism, even if you want, it will be there. But I think they realize that if you want to keep going and have that kind of winning dynasty or how much you can win, it's now. It's not in 2 or 3 years' time. You could keep exactly the same squad and go again, sure, and you might win again some stuff, maybe. But you can make this team better and win again with it, for sure.
All right, final question. Going back to the issue of the collective, if we had to pick a player of the year early on this season, there was one game against Liverpool where David Raya made some just ridiculous save off of Salah, and either he like kept it a win, otherwise it would have been a draw or whatever else, right? And so it would be coming down last inning. And I said, oh, if Arsenal win the title, that is one of those moments.
Yeah.
And I know it's silly because there's millions of moments, but in my mind, I look at what Raya has done this season. I look at the fact that, in Spain, he's probably not even considered one of the top 3 Spanish keepers, which I think is kind of silly, but hey. For me, David Raya deserves to be Arsenal's player of the year, but there's so many correct answers to this one. I'll put you on the spot. Are you going to pick? You're going to pick. I'm going to guess you're going to pick Saliba.
Yeah. I just think I know. I hear you on Ryan. I'm with you completely. I was at the Brighton game and at the home Brighton game, and the way I was sat literally just behind on the angle of the Jakube Minte shot at 2-1 that goes in the top corner and he saves it. I still don't know how he saved it, but to go back to your Liverpool point, they could have done that.
Moments like that, yeah.
But for me, Willian, because he's the best defender in the world, because I think that Raya was also protected by somebody like him in front of him. I think Rice benefited from Saliba to be that good. I think he's improved on the ball. I think he's just incredible. And it's hard because some people will say Rice, others might say Gabriel even, more for the attacking threat. Two, you might want to go for, I don't know, somebody else maybe. But for me, Saliba.
I was thinking of like Saliba howlers this year. And the only one that comes to mind is, and I think it was in the Champions League semi-final, that back header where then, it wasn't the Champions League semi-final, right?
Yeah, he flips it, There's the one against United. There's been a couple.
There's a couple, but like the fact that like we remember them tells you kind of, I think, all you need to know about the season he's had.